As of today, a bank or other financial service provider will be able to immediately freeze or suspend an account without a court order.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
You just witnessed one of the greatest Bitcoin promotions ever. And no, it was not a Super Bowl commercial. It was from the Canadian government. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has vowed to freeze anti-mandate protesters' bank accounts, meaning that at any moment they can freeze and block a bank account for any reason. So what's the background for this story? Well, in Canada, there were truckers that were protesting the mandate. And as the protesters gained traction, they raised over $10 million to a GoFundMe fundraising campaign. And as we know, GoFundMe is a centralized platform. So the Canadian government stepped in and they said, we are going to block these funds. They will not receive these funds. And of course, as we know in the crypto space, when it comes to centralized platforms, you can do this at any moment. And then from there, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergency Act for the first time since the act was introduced in 1988. This is insane. And with this act, the Canadian government has now obligated crowdfunding platforms and payment providers to report all suspicious transactions. And it means that these protesters in question are now categorized the same way as terrorists, and any donations supporting them constitute the same as terrorist financing. So in the crypto space, we're not very surprised. We've always known that when you use centralized platforms and centralized banks, your money is not really your money. It can be frozen, it can be taken from you at any moment. So of course, the crypto community stepped in, the Bitcoin community stepped in, and in response to the GoFundMe ban, the protesters turned to alternative funding methods. They raised more than 20 Bitcoin, worth roughly 900,000 in a few days, because as we know, you cannot stop Bitcoin. It is permissionless, it is censorship resistant. And from here, Canada's Prime Minister has included crypto transactions part of the Emergency Act. But how do you enforce it? Bitcoin, it's impossible to censor, freeze, or seize if used accordingly, meaning if used outside of a centralized party, right? If you're using cryptocurrency or Bitcoin through an exchange, it's no different than using it through a bank. But when you use it with your own self-custody wallet, how do you stop it? And when it comes to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, we always think, yes, maybe in the United States, we don't need it. Maybe in these first world countries, we don't need it. But I could see how maybe these third world countries need it, right? They don't have banking. There's a lot of crime and corruption. But we're starting to see now that even first world countries have a need for Bitcoin, a need for cryptocurrency. And when we look at something like Bitcoin, we look at it and say, hey, it's outdated, right? It doesn't have smart contracts. It doesn't have NFTs. It doesn't have DeFi like Ethereum does or like Solana does, which I would say, yes, that's definitely a huge downside of Bitcoin. But we always forget one of the biggest use cases for cryptocurrency. It's a very simple use case, and that is censorship resistant money. When we look at Bitcoin, Satoshi did not create it to make anyone rich. He created it for two main reasons. Reason number one, create a currency outside of government control so that the government cannot inflate it. And number two, create money that is permissionless and censorship resistant. Anyone can use it. And along with being a censorship resistant currency, it also needs to be secure and it needs to be safe from attack. So when we look at all of the cryptocurrencies today, if governments and banks just came down crashing hard and they banned everything, there are very few cryptocurrencies that would survive. If we look at the list of all of the cryptocurrencies, it's most likely that only Bitcoin at the moment would be able to survive, maybe some other cryptocurrency as well, maybe something like Ethereum, because when it comes to being censorship resistant, it also has a lot to do, like we said, with security, but also there needs to be liquidity. Over the last year, I lived in Mexico. And while I was there, I joined some crypto groups and people were trading Bitcoin peer-to-peer without third parties, without exchanges. They were not doing it with Ethereum. They were not doing it with Solana. They were not doing it with Cardano. They were doing it with Bitcoin. At the moment, as I make this video, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, an asset that people actually can trade peer-to-peer. They don't need third parties. They don't need any intermediaries. Whereas with many of these other cryptocurrencies, you actually do, right? If you actually want to get those funds and maybe convert them back to fiat dollars, you probably will need a third party. But this is how it is now. This could definitely change in the future. And when we look at all of the lists of cryptocurrencies, like I said, very few are actually used for this purpose and can do it successfully. And when we look at something like Monero, this I see as a very important cryptocurrency because included in this act is cryptocurrency. So you can't stop Bitcoin. It's censorship resistant. However, you can monitor it. Everything is very transparent on the blockchain. So I'm sure that people dealing with Bitcoin for these reasons, not just in Canada, but in other places of the world, there are times where they want to keep it private, and it's pretty hard to keep Bitcoin private. This is where I see a very big use case for privacy coins. I've always seen this use case for privacy coins. And when it comes to privacy coins, the number one at the moment is Monero. And when it comes to cryptocurrency and investing, I usually look at Monero. I've said this many times. It's very questionable in terms of an investment asset because it's very hard to trade. It's not available in many places. And big money is very hesitant getting involved with this cryptocurrency. But at the same time, I do not see a cryptocurrency such as Monero fading away. You know that saying we always have in the crypto space, 90% of coins will fade away? Yes, I agree with that. And I think that will happen, maybe even more than 90%. But while I don't think Monero is the best investment vehicle, at the same time, I don't think coins like Monero will fade away. There will always be a use case for coins that are censorship resistant, and especially for coins that are private. We are seeing in real time one of the main use cases for cryptocurrency, and that is simply being censorship resistant money. Now, I myself, I'm not against banks and third parties. I use them myself. I use banks. I use crypto exchanges, but at the same time, something I always say is that it probably would be a good idea to keep at least a portion of your assets, or in this case, cryptocurrency, in your control, outside of the control of a third party. This is why I believe in hardware wallets, the two best wallets being Trezor and Ledger. And if you want to learn about Ledger, the Nano S versus the Nano X, go ahead and check this video, link right above and in the description down below. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.